radio issues for a reason. Basically in this country for the last 40 years, 50 years, terrestrial broadcasters have been exempt from paying for the use of a performance when they play a song on the radio. So what that means is that the songwriter gets paid. And that's what the money is generated through ASCAP, BMI, and CSAC. But the performer, the person who actually plays that song, which often is the same person as songwriter, but often it's not, they don't get paid. And the United States is fairly unique in that. The United States is one of the only countries that doesn't pay terrestrial performance right. So a coalition has come together, and we've been involved in this for 4 or 5 years, but now there's a formal lobbying coalition that's working very hard on this issue to try to get Congress to say, look, there's no reason that terrestrial broadcasters should have this exemption. It's particularly unfair in the jazz community when you have performers doing interpretations of standards, songs they haven't written, but it's their version of the song, which is why the radio station is playing it in the first place. It's really hard for cover versions. It really is just not right, and particularly as we see a change in the industry. We're not talking about the radio industry of the 1970s. We're talking about a different corporate industry. They should pay for use of music, we feel. We also feel that music consumption is moving away from, this is part of the theme in Charlie's presentation, it's moving away from what it used to be, which is that if you had a song on the radio, you were going to get compensated because a lot of people are going to hear that song, they're going to go down to the record store and purchase your record. Well, that's not the way it's working anymore. Increasingly, music is more of a service. It's more something that you listen to and you access. And so, again, we believe radio stations should pay for the use of this music, particularly, as Gene mentioned in the last presentation, when people create a radio service and they have a digital radio service. So if it's a webcaster, if it's a cable radio service, if it's satellite radio, they're all paying this. The only group that's not paying this performance right is the terrestrial broadcaster. So we just think there's no rationale to keep this exemption in place. You have a lot of artists, the way it plays out for American artists is that if you have had a hit in Spain or in Belgium or some European country, you've got royalties over there that you've accruing. You're not going to get those royalties because that country says, well, you're not paying our artists, we're not going to pay you. So you have a lot of artists here in the States who can't, this is particularly, again, you talk about the way independent artists tend to get the short end of this thing. You might get no radio play in the United States, you may get a ton of radio play in Europe, you're not going to get your European radio royalties because the broadcasters who aren't paying you here anyway, they're not playing your music, they're not paying your royalties because they're not paying the European artists, the European countries aren't going to pay you. So anyway. So, public performance right, we are hopefully going to, we're working on trying to pass that legislation. It's a tough go, it's a long slog. I don't know if and when it'll get passed, but hopefully next several years.